Hello YouTubers and welcome to another video. I'm going to do a bit of a short review here about a record that was issued or released yesterday. I normally do not do full-blown reviews in this video channel. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, but still I thought, well, this time I think it's a good idea. And because, well, it's one of my, well, let's say house gods, house heroes, musical inspiration feeds for the last, well, over 30 years anyway. And I'm talking about Paul Simon. He has just issued another solo album. I think it is number 14, which is not that many since he's been making, well, his first solo record came as back in 1965. But still, and it is Into the Blue Light. I'm showing here the CD version because that's the one I got hold of immediately. I'm waiting for the vinyl release to, well, be mailed to me as soon as possible. So, the thing that I've always admired with Paul Simon is the fact that he's been reinventing himself. He's always been trying to find new sounds, new ideas, and he's always avoided looking back, and also well, open up my eyes to the fact that there's so much interesting music all over the world. Well, in South America, in Africa, and so on. This is that's one reason why I've been a great fan of him since the early 1980s. I mean, we talk about when I was, well, before I was 10 years old, I knew who Paul Simon was, and that I was a great fan of him. My mother's a great fan of him, of course, so I have to thank her for the fact that I could listen to his music as early as back then. Anyway, so what's so special about this album? Well, for the first time, he has actually been looking back into time a bit. He's been checking his catalog, and he picked out some songs that I thought, well, these are songs that I really like, but they didn't really get the attention that they deserved back then, and maybe they need a second chance. And this is, for the first time, actually, well, more or less, that Paul Simon has been looking back and trying to do something new with old stuff. Of course, he's been playing old songs on concerts and so on, but when we talk about on recordings here, on studio recordings. When I've heard the first track some time ago, which was One Man's Ceiling is Another Man's Floor, the track that starts the whole album, a track that originally was on the album There Goes Ryman Simon. Somebody made a comment, this was here on YouTube, somebody made a comment, oh, I'd rather listen to something new by him. And yeah, so would we all, but we know the fact that Paul Simon takes a long time to create new material because he's such a perfectionist. He keeps saying that he's not a perfectionist, that is his producer back in time, Roy Halley, was, but Paul Simon is a perfectionist. That's how it is. There's no way of denying that. And he decided that he was going, he made his, I think it was called his farewell tour earlier this year. And of course, he's getting on a bit. He's getting close to 80. I think he's 76, 77. He was born in early 40s. So give him a break. Give him a break. He is entitled to actually take it a bit easy, and also he's entitled to look back onto his old catalog. And instead of making a new record with all his biggest hits but in new arrangements or and so on, he picks some of the lesser known songs from his catalog, at least to the main public, and decides to make some sort of well, reinterpretation of them. And I think that's I think that's fine. I think that's fine. And I listened to it a couple of times since I got back from the city where I found it. And um, I think it is mainly a very good record. Some of the songs, I'm not sure if I think the new versions are better than the old ones, but well, we'll get into that. Anyway, the first track, as I said, One Man's Ceiling is Another Man's Floor from the 1973 album There Goes Rhyme Simon. Um, Together with, well, it's a quite simple arrangement, quite mellow, but the original arrangement was quite mellow as well. Not that big difference, even if the soundscape has changed a bit since 1973. It's a fair start of the album. Then the second track is Love, and for one reason or another, I mean, there aren't any tracks from Graceland on this album. There aren't any tracks from Cape Man, songs from the Cape Man, but there are 4 tracks from the album You're the One from 2000. This one that I do not have on vinyl, but I hope that Music on Vinyl or a similar company decides to reissue this on vinyl, because it is one of my favorite Paul Simon albums, even if it's not one of his most famous ones. And as I said, he picked 4 tracks from this album to be on Into the Blue Light album. And the first one is Love, which is probably, in my view at least, his best love song. It's a lovely ballad, and he makes it here together with old drumming buddy Steve Gadd and the great jazz guitar legend Bill Frisell. And I think you can realize what kind of sound we get then. A mellow, jazzy, lyrical sound that is beautiful. But one thing is that I actually am very fond of the actual soundscape of the album on You're the One, with all the percussion and the Mark Stewart. I think it's Mark Stewart on the guitar, and so not sure if I think it's a better version. I don't think so. I prefer the original one, but still, it's a lovely interpretation. Third track is the only track from the album The Rhythm of the Saints from 1990. It's Can't Run But. And that's the second track of the album Rhythm of the Saints. And it's the original track is all built up by percussion instruments playing the whole accompaniment. There might be some guitar thrown in there, but it's mainly just drums, and all the melodies being played on different percussive instruments too. It's built a really nice soundscape. And when I think about the Rhythm of the Saints, I think it's when you listen to it with your headphones on, it's like floating down a river, lying in a canoe with all the jungles around you, surrounding you, with the music and the drumming and the feeling of it all. So how did they treat this? Well, Paul Simon worked with a very interesting music group called Y Music, consisting of C.J. Kameri on trumpet, Alex Sopp on flutes, Hideaki Aomori on clarinet, Rob Moose on violin, Nadia Sirota on viola, and Gabriel Cabchas, sorry if I mess up the pronunciation, on cello. So a bit of a chamber sextet, if there's such a thing, with the classical music instruments. And I have to say, Bryce Dessner made a really great interpretation of the original Rhythm of the Saints arrangements by Marco Antonio Guimares. Sorry again, but it's really great. So I still might think that, okay, I prefer the Rhythm of the Saints, but it's a really interesting way of doing it, because I thought, okay, this track that mainly contains of percussive sounds, how are you going to make this with some sort of chamber sextet? But really, really well made, I have to say that. Fourth track, How the Heart Approaches What It Yearns, from the album, where is it? Oh, I forgot to pick it up. Never mind. It's from the album One Trick Pony. When we talk about the Paul Simon catalog, there's one album that I don't really have that many feelings for, and it is the One Trick Pony album. The movie was, well, so, even if I thought it was fun to see him actually do some acting, and he did it quite well. But the whole movie had I don't know. I wish, and also I wish that he had put a bit more effort in making the songs of the album a bit more interesting. But for some reason, I find the One Trick Pony album a bit boring, actually. Sad to say, but it is the Paul Simon that I listen to the fewest time, and when I put it on, I understand, yeah. And it's funny because it was the first Paul Simon album that I really heard. And even if I became a fan more when I listened to this next one, Hearts and Bones, still, How the Heart Approaches What It Yearns is a very nice ballad, even though I thought that the One Trick Pony arrangement was a bit, I don't know. It felt a bit dated in the 1980s, more like something that could have been recorded in 1976 and so on. And if it's something that Paul Simon never really can be accused of, is feeling dated, because Paul Simon has always looked ahead. But in that case, I wasn't a fan. Though I have to say that the jazz treatment that song is being given on this album is brilliant. It's a jazz quartet with Sullivan Fortner on piano, Nate Smith on drums, John Patitucci on bass, and the great jazz legend Wynton Marsalis on trumpet. And here I think it lifts a bit. The next track is from the album. Well, back to the album, You're the One. And we talk about the track Pigs, Sheep and Wolves. And it is a very odd Paul Simon song with a quirky, strange humor that I was a bit surprised when I heard it back in 2000. It wasn't like anything I'd heard before. It's a fun story though, fun and cruel. But as I said, again, I'm a great fan of the very typical soundscape of this particular album. But here it is being given. It's like Party in New Orleans. It's Mardi Gras, because we talk about. It's a bit like the Dirty Dozen brass band treatment, because we have an orchestra with all the jazz instruments: trumpet, clarinet, saxophone, tuba, trombone, drums, tambourine. It's a they make it into a real jazz experience, not in the mellow piano jazz version as we talked about earlier in the How the Heart Approaches What It Yearns. Here we talk about Dixieland, almost a Dixieland treatment to a quite complicated song like Pigs, Sheep and Wolves. So it's really good. It's really good. I have to say that. Okay, time then with track number 6, and it's the ballad Renee and Georgette Magritte with a Dog After the War. And I was a bit concerned about whether I would enjoy this treatment. It is on the album Hearts and Bones. That's always been very close to me, even though it was a bit of a failure back then. But I have to say it is again Y Music who's been giving this song a nice chamber music treatment, and it actually works very well because it's a lovely ballad that can be played and enjoyed just on a simple guitar. It is a song that has so many qualities that it works, I think, in most styles, and yeah. It is a nice version. I'm not sure whether I like it more than the original, because of course the original has been with me for over 30 years, so it cannot really be replaced that easily. Okay, the seventh track is The Teacher, and again, a track from You're the One. And that track is here being given Latin guitar treatment by the guitar players Odair Azad and Sergio Azad, and well, some other musicians too. And I think it actually works very well. The Teacher on the original wasn't really one of my favorite tracks on that album, even if I like it. But I think here this version with this Latino guitar style accompaniment, it works very well, and maybe even a bit better, even if it wouldn't have fitted in with the soundscape of the You're the One album otherwise, but still, I like it. Okay, over to the eighth song, and we talk about Darling Lorraine. And I remember, this is also from You're the One. I remember when I first heard Darling Lorraine back in 2000, and I was so taken aback. It was after I heard it, it was as if I forgot how to breathe. And I'm sure you all have sometime or another heard songs that has such a deep impact on you that you just say, wow. And I know that Paul Simon has said himself that it's one of his own favorite songs. And I have to agree, it's one of his absolutely best songs, even if it's not one of his most famous songs. It's, well, as somebody wrote in a review back then, it's one of the truly great songs. I'm not going to say more because you can check it out yourself. I'm not going to give anything away, but it's a really good song. So here it is performed together with a nice group that is like a mix of the whole album with the Y Music ensemble, together with Bill Frisell, and also some old musicians that have been on previous records, like Mark Stewart, which was of course on the original You're the One, and Vincent Ingini, who I think has played on almost every Paul Simon album since The Rhythm of the Saints. I'm not sure if he's played on all of them, but almost everyone. And also drumming legend Steve Gadd, who played with Paul Simon way back in the 1970s. And it is a lovely version, but still I prefer the original one. But it is, I think it is one of these good songs that needs a second chance. Maybe really good songs aren't that commercial nowadays because it's not what people want really, but still, it was very good of him to choose that song to be included on this album. I'm happy he did. I agree with him. It's one of his best songs, and a song that should be more known to the general public. Okay, the ninth song is Some Folks' Lives Roll Easy, and now we get back to the 70s, to the Still Crazy After All These Years album from 1975. It is it is a song. I mean, this is a very good album. I'm a great fan of the Still Crazy album. I've talked about this album many times. It is. I've always thought that the Some Folks' Lives Roll Easy is one of the least exciting songs on the album. It doesn't really stick out as much as many of the others. But here, it's been given this lovely jazz quartet treatment again with Sullivan Fortner and when Joe Lovano on the saxophone, and so on. And it works really well. It lifts the song several levels with a new or old style piano jazz treatment, a bit like modern jazz quartet, but without the vibraphone, but plus add the saxophone. Although Salvador Fortner plays the celeste, so it's gives it a bit of a modern jazz quartet sound. Okay, and the final song is a rather new one. If we talk Paul Simon standards, it's "Questions for the Angels," which was on this album, "So Beautiful or So What" from 2011. And it's played, well, mainly you hear the electric guitar by Bill Frisell here. And it's a nice closing of the album. I don't know really if I think it's better than the original. I think it's a nice version of a song that is really good, but I don't have that deep relationship with that song. If you compare it to many of these songs that are 20 years old, or almost 20 years old or older, still. Paul Simon said now that he's stopped touring. I hope it doesn't mean that he stopped making music or creating music. I hope that he's in good health and feels like he has more music to make and create. This was a welcome and a bit unexpected release, to say the least. If I would grade it on a scale to 1 to 5, I would give it a 4, because it's very well done. And the one thing that I would wish, though, is couldn't we have more than 10 songs? We want more than 10 songs, because when you hear Paul Simon, a new album, you always keep thinking, oh, I wish there would have been some more songs, because usually that's how good he is. Well, I've been talking now for 22 minutes. Time for me to shut up and listen to Into the Blue Light once again. Thank you for listening, and bye bye.